Hello. I want to make the happy announcement that my book on oikophobia, or Western self-hatred, is finally under contract. Some of you watching this know that I have previously written and talked about oikophobia, and that I have a few videos on this channel on that subject, and that I've also written about it for Quillette and a few other outlets. And so I am very happy and proud to be able to announce that my book, titled Western Self-Contempt, Oikophobia in the Decline of Civilizations, will be published on May 15th, 2022 by Cornell University Press. While other philosophers and writers have discussed particular aspects of Western cultural self-hatred or written various jeremiads against it, my book will be the very first ever systematic monograph treatment of this subject. It will analyze oikophobia by examining the socio-historical and philosophical background from which oikophobia arises, and this historical exposition will be accompanied by both diachronic and synchronic philosophical discussion. The book can already be pre-ordered from all of the major outlets like Amazon and Barnes&Noble, and also directly from the publisher. If you wish to order the book, I'm certainly very grateful for your interest, regardless of where you ordered from, and I will put links in the description below to all the major pre-ordering pages. So, for those of you who care about our society and are troubled by its self-hatred, and if you also wish to support the kind of work that I do, you would also help me enormously by sharing this announcement video with those of your family and friends who you think might be interested in the topic. Thank you. So what I thought I'd do for the rest of this video is to show you the table of contents so you know what to expect, and also perhaps so as to whet your appetite a little bit if I can. So, let's take a look. The introduction explains the topic and talks about the term itself and the history of the term. The first chapter proper, Oikophobia in Ancient Greece, traces historically the very first development of oikophobia in the Western world and how it arose in Greece. In chapter 2, Oikophobia's relativism, we see that oikophobia often expresses itself as a sort of philosophical relativism, and I place this chapter here because the first traces of oikophobia in ancient Greece were generally relativist in nature. Chapter 3, Oikophobia in Rome, continues the historical journey by looking at how oikophobia developed in that civilization, and of course there will be a number of parallels with Greece. This concludes the ancient world. Since the next period, the Middle Ages, was a highly religious era, Chapter 4, the role of religion, is where I discuss the relationship between a civilization and its religion, and the fact that religion must be weakened in order for oikophobia to occur. The historical exposition then continues with Chapter 5, Oikophobia in France, where we travel in that country from the late Middle Ages to the 19th century to see the rise of oikophobia there. We do the same in Britain in Chapter 6, except that here we move on into the 20th century, since oikophobia developed later in Britain than in France, and I explain the reasons for this. In Chapter 7, we examine what I call oikophobia as positivism, which is a sort of philosophical opposite of the oikophobia as relativism that we saw earlier, although these will ultimately fuse together. The reason I place this chapter here is that the philosophical positivism that I'm talking about developed to a considerable extent in Britain and also through a number of German philosophers. In Chapter 8, we come to my own country, the United States, and here we follow the development of oikophobia all the way up to the present day. I call this chapter Oikophobia in the United States the Past, because in this chapter we look only at the historical development, and this chapter is also the last of our historical journeys. Chapter 9, Cyclical and Progressive Theory, is devoted to discussing the philosophy of history and to examining the conclusions for that philosophy that we can draw from the historical expositions in this book. I also devote some space here to answering certain critiques of my arguments that I anticipate. Chapter 10, Oikophobia in the United States, the Present, deals with the state of oikophobia in present-day America and discusses it this time not from a historical, but from a philosophical perspective. And the last chapter proper, 11, The Confluence of the West, does the same thing for the West as a whole, since it is the case that different parts of the West resemble each other more and more. Here we also see the confluence of relativism and positivism in the nexus of oikophobia, and we see how ideas from the Frankfurt School and French postmodernism are defended by oikophobes, even by those who know absolutely no philosophy at all. Finally, in the epilogue on personal freedom, I end on a more positive note by explaining that although the development of oikophobia across civilizations is largely inevitable, and although free will is an illusion, this does not preclude us from having a real and meaningful impact upon our surroundings and our societies. So there you have it. As I said, the book will be out on May 15th. If the topic interests you and you would like to support me and the work that I do, it would, again, be very helpful to me if you share this video with others. Thank you very much.